You are listening to Back to Before. That's a song off of Mr. Ryan Montaño's new album, which is set to release worldwide very soon. Now, officially tomorrow, December 7th, at the African American Pavilion, we're going to be celebrating that release and selling some CDs, so you can definitely make it out there and check that out. It was wonderful to sit down with my man Ryan and get into his brain about the songs that he's put out on this album, how much work, sweat, blood, tears, all of that came into the picture, and how much he really took the role upon himself to make his music sound the way that he really had it in his mind. It was great, and it was wonderful to really talk about the role of collaborative writing and how much that affects your music, your sound, and your tendencies. I mean, you write with other people and you get some of their influences, and all of a sudden you come out a different person. And it's a beautiful thing. You're a better person for it, and you're a better musician and an artist and a composer for it. And so we really get to sit down and digest some of the songs. I love that we do that. It's one of the first episodes that we've literally taken apart some of the songs and played them, talked through them or talked after them, and really got into his mind about each and every part of the process. Now, you can definitely keep up with Mr. Ryan Montaño's music through his website, which I'll be putting links to below in the information. Keep an eye out for that album, which is set to release worldwide very soon, to get your copy of it. And enjoy this episode of Art Talk Music with my man Ryan. As always, if you like the episode, tell a friend, like, subscribe, definitely come back for more. And thank you for listening. What's going on, Mr. Ryan Montaño?
Hello.
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 What is going on with you, my man? You've been traveling. You were in Lansing, Michigan not too long ago. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. I was playing a jazz festival out in Lansing. I had, it's funny because I always hear about musicians whenever they travel, and granted, the ones that complain about it probably do it infinitely more times than I get to do, because I don't get to travel and play that much. But when I do, when I was coming back, I was flying from out of Detroit to, I had a layover in Chicago, and that was like 3.5 hours. And then, so like it ended up being about a 9-hour travel day. And I just remember thinking the whole time, being like, man, if this is what I have to do in order to play music every day, I'll do 12 hours. I'll do 15 hours. Like, I don't know. It really didn't bother me at all. But then again, I probably don't do it as much as some of these seasoned travelers that get to tour and do all those things. But I mean, I want to get to that point where I complain about it.
Right. You know that there's the experience also of just like, in general, musicians and cats that are on the road all the time talk about, you get paid to travel, you know, and that experience of everything is just like, oh, it just comes from, yeah, it's like actually you have to sit in the car and drive 13 hours to the next town, or you have to sit at the airport for accumulation of like 4.5, 5 hours, and then take 3 different connecting flights to get you to your place, and then have sound check and play that night. I mean, it's amazing and it sounds enticing, and don't get me wrong, I'm not putting it down or making it sound harsh or wrong or something that is unpleasant, but I mean, the experience of that being your everyday, and not just your everyday, but your every year, and not your every year, but, you know, having done it 10, 20, 30 years, you know, it's like, it wears on your body, you know what I'm saying?
As
like,
with anything.
As with anything, that's right, you know. But I think at least, you know, and the reason I talk about that is just because I'm bringing that up of where that comes from, of those people that complain about it, you know. And it's not complain about being on the road and having the opportunity to do that. It's just that being in hotel rooms can be amazing, or it can not be amazing.
See, I've heard a lot, like a lot of people, they talk about that. They're like, oh, I don't like not being able to sleep in my own bed. Like I played up in Colorado, in Trinidad, Colorado. And that's like I don't know, was that like 6-7 hour drive from Albuquerque? I think it's like 5 or 6. And a lot of the guys, they didn't want to stay in the hotel afterwards. They're like, oh, I don't like not sleeping in my own bed. And like for me, like, I don't know, maybe I'm weird that way, but I'm all about it. I love those novel experiences. I like sleeping. Like sometimes, like I'll end up sleeping in my car if I go on a road trip. And
yeah. There's an adventure to that, man.
Yeah, my
that
back
experience,
hurts.
Right, that
my
experience
neck
of like
hurts.
getting fucked up from just like sleeping in the wrong position in the parking lot of a hotel because you couldn't afford it. You didn't want to pay whatever money it was to do that. But I mean, that experience of sleeping in a bed that is not yours can be an adventure. It can be super tight.
Absolutely. Roy Hargrove talked about that thing that you had mentioned of you get paid. He goes, the gig is the fun part. And I was watching a YouTube video of him, and he was like, yeah, the gig is the fun part. He goes, you get paid for the travel. They don't roll out the red carpet for jazz musicians like they do for, I don't know, pop musicians, like for other musical acts. And it's like, man, coming from Roy Hargrove, who's jazz music royalty, like he's one for the history books.
Right.
So the fact that he's not getting that red carpet treatment, I'd like to sit down with him and like have a beer and just not only hear his stories, but talk about all the things that he's experienced with his traveling and with his playing with the legends, like from Oscar Peterson. Like, I don't know, man, that dude is, I don't know. He's an amazing trumpet player. But it's also kind of sad because I see like a lot of videos, especially more recently, like you could tell he's visually on something. You know what I mean? Whether, I don't know what it is, but
I mean, it's no secret
right.
in the jazz community that he's, still a functional drug addict.
And that's too bad. But do you think that contributes to like part of his...
Of your demise? Absolutely. We all have our habits, right? But I mean, not just we all have our own habits. It's also like we all choose our poison, that kills us. And some people have it in different ways. I mean, some people just eat terribly their whole lives, and that is eventually the killer of them.
Promiscuous sex.
Yeah, promiscuous sex, and they get AIDS and die, or or they love adrenaline and they jump off too many cliffs or take too many, airplane dives or skydives or whatever.
Like those idiots that are, have you seen those dudes that they walk around they go on skyscrapers and they walk around and they're doing like handstands and flips and everything. I was like, man, like,
and the guys that are on those balancing, what are those things called? You know what I'm talking about? The balancing boards, those like things that, it's like the roller skates that move you straight forward. You know what I'm talking about? That you balance on?
The hoverboards?
Hoverboards.
They do hoverboards on top of that?
Oh yeah, you have not seen that, man? Oh, it is scary. It's like that's something that I saw from the Joe Rogan Experience because he had one of those guys on.
Joe Hogan.
Respect.
Mr. Joe Hogan.
Yo, but so the road is a fun experience, but it's not as pleasant when you don't get to like have the pleasure of playing and like making music and doing what you did, which was like step out of your comfort zone and play with a whole different band and just meet all new people and like immerse yourself in it. You know what I'm saying? And that stuff is, I mean, it's really revitalizing. I mean, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can be extremely stressful and you deal with all these egos and divas, and I'm sure there was a balance of that, But I mean...
that stuff used to really bother me, like people with like huge egos. That really used to get to me to the point of like, it was like, why, how could someone possibly act that way? But now, it still bothers me, but not nearly as much. I don't know why it doesn't bother me so much, but I don't know. I guess it's just something I never quite understand. Maybe it comes out of a point of insecurity or whatnot, but it's actually like, that's something I try to go like consciously out of my way to make sure that's something I never demonstrate, whether it's be like playing with another band or whoever it is.
Right.
Man,
I don't know, man. I love going out into those new experiences and stepping out of sleeping in your own bed every night. I mean, there is an amazing feeling that comes with having that solid bed that you experience every single night, but you don't get to experience those new boundaries of finding out who you are by being put into a new situation and playing a show with all new cats and then going out to a jam session and meeting all these new people and making all these new connections that then end up resulting in, people that follow your craft or whatever you do and admire it. And I love that, man. It's revitalizing. I mean, even if they don't become lifelong, supporters and stuff like
right.
that. It's just about that circle of like you working, you putting in the hours, you doing all of the work to get to where you want to get, and then the fruits of your labor. You get to like go travel, do a little bit of the, what can be tedious and tough part, which is the travel, and then go experience the fucking awesome part, which is getting to play. And yeah, what tunes did you? I mean, you released an album that has not officially been released worldwide, but this podcast is coming out right around the time that you're about to be releasing it, and so the public will be able to access the CD everywhere. But I mean, tell me about the name of the CD and what the vibe of it is, because.
So this album is called, I was debating about what to call it, but then kind of like my boy Thomas Primasic, drummer and engineer extraordinaire, he was telling me about Jack White. He's not a creator of content or a creator of music and ideas. He is a receiver. He is a conduit. He is a catalyst, so to speak. It's like the ideas and the songs, they all come from other places. And then like the name was kind of that, like when it came, it was like, okay, that feels right. And so the name of it was called Truth Journey. And basically, without going into too much detail, like the first CD that I ever put out was in 2013. It's called Something Happened Tuesday. And that CD was 100% my vision.
Album. Can you see that album? I don't mean to like correct you.
Anal bum cover.
But there's a guy named Elijah Carroll in New Orleans who's a freaking marketing genius whiz that is always like trying to get me out of the habit of calling it CD, because CDs are outdated and stuff.
It's true. That's a good point.
And that's an album that you put out. Your first album.
My first album. Right. So 2013, Something Happened Tuesday. That was 100% my vision. And I remember when I was recording it, I was listening. You actually recorded on that when we first, the first
Shepherd Studios.
Yeah, Shepherd Studios 2009. And I remember driving home from that, and I was like, man, this is gonna be one for the history books. Like they're gonna be listening back to these and like, man, this is the day that we created this history like music. And it's funny because I listen back to it now, and it's like I'm still proud of them and the way they turned out, but it's we've come a long way as musicians, which is a good thing.
I mean, it's a trip to. I mean, we always like have to have in our minds that we are putting out and we are creating the best things that we can at that moment.
You have to.
We're always creating better and better things. Hopefully, if we're striving and we're getting better and doing our craft, not just practicing, but also actually performing it. Because like you did with this album, how you piece it together in a way of writing the songs, collaboratively writing some of the tunes, and then playing them and really working them out in a way like Jonathan did. Our friend Jonathan Rodriguez, drummer here in Albuquerque, from Douglas, Arizona. But
population
the
12.
The experience is that we always bust their balls. No, the experience is that of like what Miles Davis or what guys back in the day in the jazz history books, as I remember reading, or the stories as they came about, was that they'd be on the road playing 6 nights a week and playing these songs over and over and over and over again, and getting so deep into the songs, and then taking that polished product into the studio.
Yep.
Which is basically what you did, and that experience of not just playing producer and like taking these ideas, these musical things soundscapes that you've created in your mind and in your bedroom, into the studio with these musicians that then you're trying to relay the story as to what it is, or try and repaint the pictures so they can in their own way create it. It's like there's a magic to just capturing vibes. And it's been cool seeing your music in the past couple of years move towards that,
For sure.
From the different musicians and stuff that have played in it, but just the artistic direction that you've taken, and like to think that back then what you put out, which is, it's, we still play some of those songs. They're great songs, but it's like we're always growing. We're always getting deeper into who we are, right?
Absolutely. And
Truth
I think
Journey, you said,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Well, that ties into the whole concept of the album was Truth Journey, because that first album was 100% my vision. And then between that album and then this album, Truth Journey, I released singles, and I released them to smooth jazz, contemporary jazz radio. And that kind of came about because my first CD that I put out, I sent it to the radio station here, the smooth jazz radio station here in Albuquerque, and they said we can't play it because it's too artistic. And I disagreed. I thought it was because the music, the vision that I've always had for what I've been trying to do musically has always been, it's not really smooth jazz, but it's not straight ahead jazz. It's like, it's kind of this thing, it straddles that middle ground of kind of in between straight ahead and having that pop sort of sound to it. So basically I ended up getting hooked up with a producer out of Denver. And the whole goal for that first single, which was called I'd Like That, was to have something to get played on the local radio station here, because that was like my goal, to kind of expand and build regionally. Yeah. And then through his recommendation, he referred it to some radio promoters, and that thing ended up doing really well nationally and opened up a lot of doors. It went on Billboard, got played on satellite radio stations across the world, opened up a lot of jazz festival performance opportunities, which is really cool. And then I released a follow-up single after that.
Now, hold on. I just have to ask you,
sure,
what is it like when you get your song on Billboard? Like, do you get notification not just through email, but like, do you get some kind of recognition? Because
I mean, the biggest difference that I noticed was the amount of, like, on my social media, the people that were, because normally like the people that were friend requesting and following and liking my posts were all out of Albuquerque. And then once that started to kind of do its thing,
blossom, yeah. People came back and started following.
People were like, oh, I heard this song, I really like it, and they would
follow you for that.
Yeah,
that's sick.
And that's cool.
Those are true supporters because of your craft. Like, they found you and know about you because of your craft, not just people in Albuquerque who know about you because, oh yeah, I went to school with him, right? Went to church with him.
Yeah. And that was a cool feeling. Like, it was different for sure. It's something that I totally didn't expect. And then about a year later, I released another single in that vein of smooth jazz called Honey Girl. And that one did even better. And that one, like, it allowed me to quit my job and be able to do music full time. But, and I kind of knew it from the start, but it wasn't something that I really gave a lot of credence to, is that the sound of it, that style, that smooth jazz, formulaic, commercial sound that you do for instrumental music, it's hard because I grew up listening to Rick Braun, Boney James, Dave Koz, all those smooth jazz, contemporary jazz, Jeff Lorber luminaries, and I genuinely, and I still like their music, but it just, something about it didn't quite resonate with me, even though it opened up a lot of doors. So then after
did you feel like pigeonholed by it, or what do you mean? Like,
I felt like it wasn't honest. I felt like it wasn't me. It felt like I was doing it for the sake of popularity and for the sake of
financial means.
No, to be honest with you, no, because like the financial aspect came well after that, and it was more of just like, okay, how can I get more popularity and how can I get out there more, which I guess it necessarily isn't a bad thing, but deep down it didn't feel right, and it was kind of something I didn't really pay attention to. But then it was about a year and a half before I released any music after that, and that's when I released that song "Burning Boats," and that was like. That was me straddling the smooth jazz, contemporary jazz versus honesty, and that song, it didn't do as well.
What do you mean by honesty? Just like honesty as far as like who you are, as opposed to like what you became famous for? Yeah,
definitely did not become famous for.
I mean, like what you became recognized for.
Exactly,
fame and all that stuff is defined by everyone's own meanings.
It's all relative for sure.
Right, but recognition.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It was different, but like when I put out that song "Burning Boats," it was
started pushing you out of the band.
It didn't do as well, like for whatever reason, but I'm okay with that, because to be honest with you, like it didn't do as well as Honey Girl, and I'd like that and I'm kind of glad it didn't. I mean, I'm disappointed that it didn't, but I'm also glad, because I figure if it had done well, it would have pushed. It didn't do bad, but it didn't do great. If it had done as well as the other ones, it would have kept pushing me in that direction. And so basically through all of that, and then listening to any kind of music, like whenever I would hang out with musicians, when I would hang out with you or Arthur or Paul, like Paul and Arthur introduced me to gospel music. Like, holy cow! Like, it was this whole genre of music. Cool. Ty Tribbett, first and foremost, John P. Key, Kim Burrell, Hezekiah Walker, all this, and I knew nothing of like gospel music.
Yeah.
But the reason I ended up liking gospel music so much was I was listening to Justin Timberlake's band. They were playing live at the VMAs, and I watched them play at the.
What album was it? Was that he put out with that band?
I think that was the 2020 experience. I don't know if it was that band, but it was around that time, and that was 2013. And I was listening to him like. That's when I became like in love with doing hits, like so you have the groove, you know, and then they would have this hit that the band would do together. And when I was listening to Justin Timberlake's band do that, I was like, holy smokes, the way they were doing that. And I would show Paul and I would show Arthur. I was like, bro, check this out. Like, what do you think of this? And they're like, man, they're like, that's straight up gospel. Like, if you want to hear some more of that, like, check out this. And they'd show me this, and then I started getting into like gospel, just legit gospel, and that's for like a year. That's all I would listen to was gospel. And then from there it kind of moved into I started like really liking Moonchild and Robert Glasper and just anybody. Like whenever I would meet new musicians or I'd have hanging out having conversations with my homies, I'd be like, so who are you checking out music? Like, who are you really like? And they're like, oh, okay, I like so and so. And then so I go into Apple Music and I'd be like, okay, what album do you recommend? And then they'd be like, oh, check out this one, and I would download it and I would listen to. And that's something I never
What's
actually
an album
did.
you would recommend if you were to recommend an album from the gospel experience you did?
Tie Trebet Victory,
Yeah,
for sure. That was
That Victory.
Yeah, it was awesome. That one was pretty sick.
Mm.
But that's, and I just listening to music and not.
So
and not
it affected you a lot, and it really brought you out of thinking, even like what, like.
I think, to be honest with you, I at that point, I mean, I've always listened to a lot of different music, but it was kind of more in the way I internalized it, because when I would do shows with my band and I would write arrangements, it was all about, okay, how does the sound of the trumpet fit within the band? How is this sitting on top of the band? I wasn't really concerned with groove. I wasn't really concerned with like what is the feel that the bass player is doing? How is the kick drum reinforcing that with the bass player? What is the guitar player? How are they coexisting with the piano player? Like what is each? To be honest with you, it was just something that didn't really concern me. I was just like, okay, how does the trumpet sound and how does the texture underneath the trumpet sound? Which I guess isn't a bad thing. But once I started to kind of expand that sound or that ideology a little bit more, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's what music is all about, like legit, truthful, honest music. And then so that whole search and and then realizing that, you know, that smooth jazz route wasn't what I truly wanted to do. Then I started writing more, and for a while, like for a year, that was a frustrating process of not being able to. Because everything I would write just kind of felt disingenuous. I was still kind of stuck in that vein of like, okay, how's the trumpet going to sound? And I had all these influence from gospel to R&B to John Mayer to singer-songwriter folk, Norah Jones, like all these things, James Taylor, Jim Croce. I had all these influences, but it's like, okay, I felt like I was just kind of straight ripping them off. And then that's when, kind of reaching out to you and to Artha and Thomas, like, dude, Thomas has been an awesome blessing because he's helped to refine this sound of this album a lot, just with his patience and his understanding of rhythm, and his engineering. Like, okay, this is the sound we're going for with the snare. This is the sound we're going with the trumpet. You know, no reverb on this. We're going for a very dry sound. We want the rest of the band to kind of reinforce that. So
to clarify, Thomas Primizik mixed the album. He was the engineer, not that recorded it, but that
he did
mixed
so much.
Helped out with editing.
He mixed it,
right?
He mixed it. We both did the editing, but he mixed it. He did the editing. He helped me co-write like that bridge on one of the tunes. It's called Back to Before. We wrote that together. Like with a lot of the demos, what I came with as I was just, okay, so I had like a riff on the piano.
Idea.
Yeah, I had an idea, whether it was on the piano or I had a trumpet idea, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, groove rise.
Yeah.
And then he would sit on the piano, and homie's really good at playing drums. He's good at playing the drums, and he's also really good at playing drums on the piano.
Right.
And so he'd be sitting there just his hands real close together on the piano and just like doing like really cool sounds. And from there we were kind of able to refine what the drums were doing. And then I would bring it to Artha, and Artha would be like, okay, I feel you. And Artha has like really big ears and a really awesome musical.
And is a big producer himself. Arthur Matters, amazing musician.
He's one of the best musicians I've ever had the opportunity to play with. But producing wise, like I think a lot of people call themselves producers. But I think it takes a really vast, I mean, I guess it kind of depends what music you want to do, but it takes like a vast knowledge and a vast ear of what kind of music works in what situations. And like, I don't know, man, dude's got it. And I think he should do more of that, but he's got his own truth journey. He's got to figure it out. So.
Yeah, sure, man, sure.
But yeah, you know, reaching out to you guys and creating music with you guys.
That creative process definitely is affected a lot when you write with other people, right? It's
exactly. Because like we played at the Outpost the other day on Thursday night, and I said it on stage, and I'll say it here. Like the fact that I got to, you guys helped me so much with the creative process. You guys made all the music infinitely better than I could have ever done had I done it the same process that I did with my first album. I mean, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, bro. We appreciate that, man. It's like it's all a circle of like enjoying ideas and enjoying playing with each other, and then just taking ideas and like all of us kind of, you know, throwing in our 2 cents.
Absolutely.
And already had a lot of influence on me early on, as well as our friend Logan Nix, who was on the very first album that you were talking about, you put out, you know, and that experience of writing with other people definitely affects everything for you, and almost kind of takes you out of a whole point of writer's block that sometimes you feel like you're in.
Breaks
right?
you out of your shell, and it just opens your mind and your ears to possibilities. And I think being open, like going into that process and knowing, like willing to relinquish control, knowing that, hey, this isn't going to be what I want, but you have to be okay with that. And that's tough, especially if, you know, for me, like, you know, I have kind of control issues, especially with, you know, my music, because it's my baby. Yeah. But going into that mindset and being like, you know what, whatever they come with, I'm going to accept. And then all of a sudden, once you start to accept it, and then you kind of distance yourself, that emotional attachment from it, you still have it, but you're more accepting of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. Like you may not like it at first, but then you kind of listen and you're like, oh, okay, that personality, that truth that they bring to that song, that's a special thing. Because you brought that a lot, especially on Penny Thoughts. That lick. We'll play it here in a little bit, but there's a lick that you do on there that was, I mean, that's awesome. Like everybody, like when I played that song in Michigan, like I listened to the guitar player that was part of the Michigan band that he played it. And it was like, you know, he did his thing, but it's like, okay, that's not like you play it your way. And that's that's your lick. And he played it his way, but you could hear how it's different. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's kind of special.
Everyone's always going to have their own.
I'm listening. I'm going to grab a beer while you're
take
talking.
On it, right? There's an experience of like not just writing music, but then taking that music that you write and that you record with people and going out into the world, aka and just out into other places from the place that you live or recorded it, and take that music and play with other people. It's a trip, man, seeing how people interpret it. Some of the people that play it play it almost exactly as they heard it on the recording, and I like that. Like I appreciate people who do that. Then there are just the people that kind of sort of listen to it. Then there are just the people who did not fucking listen to it at all. And you're just like, yeah, I can tell.
Bro, that's, I think, I wonder what that's about. You know what I mean? Because, and I guess it's just everybody has their own way of approaching professional situations. But that band in Michigan, like, so I was supposed to rehearse from 6 to 8 p.m. the night before the festival, and then my flight ended up being delayed in Dallas an hour and a half. So I actually didn't get to rehearsal till it was like 7:45, 7:47, and so they ended up staying like maybe 10 minutes later. We literally had about 20 to 25 minutes, and we went through. I was like, let's establish the groove.
So you had 25 minutes to go through.
I had 25 minutes with the band.
How long was your set? 40 minutes?
An hour. So we did intros and outros, and we did grooves. Like, okay, and then like, you know, on certain trouble sections, like the bridge or whatever of Back to Before, which was a little weird. And they nailed it. Like they did their homework. And I told them, like, especially the drummer, his name is Marquise.
But you rehearsed the day before.
Yeah, we rehearsed the day before. And like he learned our drummer, the drummer for the project, Paul Palmer, he learned his licks. He learned his grooves, his feels, like everything. I told him, like in the rehearsal, I said, I have a lot of respect for you guys, the fact that you did your homework, because I had a very dissimilar experience when I did the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, and I hired a band, and I needed some background tracks. And then when I showed up to rehearsal, they're like, oh, I said, are the tracks ready to go? And they're like, oh, we don't do that. That's for gospel cats. And I was like, really? Like right before we even played a note, their first thing was like, we can't do what you requested.
Right.
And then the styles, it was, that was frustrating.
I mean, there is that experience though of of jazz musicians sometimes not vibing with tracks. You know what I'm saying?
And say you can't do the gig.
Right. You should have found some different cats, right?
Exactly. Like he needs to tell me, it's like, listen, this is what you're requesting. We can't accommodate that. To me, that's part of being a consummate professional. Here's a name and a number of people that can do that.
Most jazz musicians are able to straddle the line between anything you throw at them.
Most.
But then there are those people.
But it's like, it's the way, I mean, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to get these guys. But I mean, if I ever go play in Jacksonville again, I can't call them because I have a certain sound that I want, and I know that they can't deliver based on the precedent that they set, which is unfortunate. But
you can probably find those musicians in that city.
Oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem. But it's like that was a learning experience because then I looked at, okay, so whenever someone hires me, I'm not going to sit there and say that I've 100% matched every artist that's ever hired me, everything that they've always asked from me. I've always done it because I haven't. But I go into that respect. Like when we did that Men's Voices show at the Albuquerque Museum of Art, it was like a summer concert series, and one of the musicians came in and basically he was unsure of his own arrangement, and so I could tell that the band was getting frustrated, but I felt like it was part of my responsibility to kind of be like, okay, like in front of the band, be like, okay, what exactly are you looking for, and give him the same respect and not due process, but the same respect and time and care to his song, even though he didn't really know it that well, that I would get to say if Bruce Springsteen walked in there, or if, insert famous musician name here, and he walked in there and said, okay, I'm doing this. Everybody would have been like, oh, okay, we're be on our best behavior, and anything that he wanted, we'd be so accommodating. But the fact, this guy wasn't necessarily famous, I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that we still gave him that same amount of respect that we would give to somebody that was famous, because of that experience in Jacksonville. Maybe to the detriment of that whole afternoon's rehearsal.
To speak to that experience, though, there was the reality that gentleman sent a song that he wanted to do, which was a recording of his song.
Bro, this is your song.
And for him not to know his own recording that he sent for the song that he wanted to do,
right? How much do you
was unprofessional on his part.
I agree.
And so to speak to the other side of that as a musician and as someone who, only had the role of doing 3 songs, right?
Right.
Only 2 or 3 songs. Like that's not a big responsibility. And
but maybe it was for him.
For you to come in and fuck up your original song from the recording that you sent, like that's fucked up.
How much do you think of that situation?
I love that dude, but come on now.
Right, but how much of that situation do you think was due to nerves? And the fact that he was in with some of the best musicians in the area.
It could have been.
Because that's intimidating, dude. I've been in that situation. Like,
but I don't mean to throw him under the bus. I mean, you can always give the benefit of the doubt to him. But the reality is, my man, is that experience taught me a lot about how much I need to be prepared in my life.
For sure.
Because when I show up to like rehearsals and play a song on my own, and I fuck up my own lyrics, bro, that's embarrassing. It's not funny for me anymore just to improvise and make up lyrics on my own song.
Now.
Because guess what? Yeah, it's like the fucking song has been out there for a long time. Toulouse, fucking learn that shit.
Right. So what if someone like Bruce Springsteen or I don't know, who's the famous like rocker, like old school rocker?
Tom Petty.
What if one of those dudes came in and he started fucking up his own song? How would you?
That's what I'm saying. Like that is disrespect to the experience of that song as people enjoy it. I mean, and of course there are the people like Jimi Hendrix, like Miles Davis, that are like when the fans are like, play this old song, he's like, fuck you, go listen to the record, says Miles Davis. And then Jimi Hendrix says, oh yeah, you want to hear fucking Hey Joe? Like, I'm gonna play you Hey Joe, and then he fucking like does
a different version
left
of it?
field. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
What?
So there are all of the experiences, and nothing is right or wrong. It is just the spectrum
And this goes into, to kind of segue a little bit, this goes into something that I've been thinking a lot about with kind of reception of your fan base. How do you feel about that whole kind of, for lack of a better term, fuck your fan base that Miles Davis had?
That's not right. I don't think that's right at all. I don't like it.
Me neither.
I think it's rude to disrespect the people that support you. And I'm just coming at that from an experience of my upbringing and what my father does, which he's an artist and a painter and a sculptor. And he has the utmost respect for every single person who comes in and admires, and then even more so takes a step further and supports his work by purchasing it.
Right.
And so that value
customer service
of your customer is your livelihood is something that I've grown up on. And not just grown up on, but grown up on well, thank you to my father's hard work. And so as a musician,
dude, by the way.
Thank you, man. But as a musician, to even think about doing that, it's like, well, Miles did it because it was like, that was the thing back then. It's like, fuck you. You know what I'm saying?
But why was it ever a thing?
But
that's what I don't get.
Because for Miles, it was a different thing. I mean, there were so many other factors that
Drugs.
we can not even drugs, culturally, upbringing, and psychologically, and emotionally, and racially, and spiritually, and culturally, like I said already. But the reality of the things that people impose on you, like the image that people expect you to be, and his rejection of that image and saying, fuck you, like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want and follow the trends. Like, you don't think I can go play with this singer? Like, bam, I'm going to show you. You don't think I can dress like them, as fly as them? Like, bam, I'm going to show you. Fucking 60 years old and I'm doing this shit. Check me out. So, if it was good or bad is not up to him, or he doesn't care. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that was his way of expressing and his way of having his relationship with his craft. Why? Because everyone fucking loved him already.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
He had that kind of benefit of
so his ability to turn, was like a move, you know?
Yeah, no,
it's like the heel in like fucking pro wrestling, right? It's like that experience of things.
Colby Covington.
Jumping into MMA. That experience of things is a trip, because, you know, then all of a sudden you have this disconnect with your audience. I don't know what it was like for Miles and his audience, but I don't want to know. So to answer your question, not to go in circles, but I have the utmost respect for anyone that comes out. And what's always humbling for me, and not to say humbling because I'm high up in the air and that I need to get put down on the ground, but what always plants me down on my ground is the jam session that happens every Wednesday.
That's an awesome thing, by the way, bro, that you've cultivated. That's kind of like your baby.
Not that I've been doing it for a couple of years, but I mean, it's from Asher and from John and from the community and
right.
And Michael and shit, you know.
But I mean, wouldn't you agree that you've kind of taken it into? We're talking about the Ben Michaels jam session, which is a weekly jazz jam session. That's kind of evolved over. Bro, I remember doing that jam session with Asher back in high school. So that was back in like 2005, 2004.
Yeah, but he was like doing it just kind of like on and off there, like every once in a while, like would do a show and turn it into a jam session kind of vibe. But the official jam session that began actually on Tuesdays.
Was it on Tuesdays?
Initially, because it happened as a response to the Scalo jam sessions ending. And that was the jam session that you and I and a lot of people here kind of grew up on, led by pianist who's now living in Denver, Colorado, Mr. Stu McCaskey.
McCaskey gave me one of my first gigs with the Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude, man, and he actually built that stage there at Scala. But he had the jam session there. Who, you know, I mean, he was an interesting character that I had an interesting relationship with.
That was a weird dynamic.
A very weird dynamic. But I mean, I'm more connected with his bass player and with his drummer, and
Michael
eventually
Glenn.
stole his.
Who was mainly drummer?
It was Arnaldo for a little while, but then Chase Ellison took over.
Arnaldo Acosta, wonderful drummer out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Chase Ellison, another wonderful drummer, originally from Albuquerque, and then he went to New York.
Upstate New York, that's right, yeah.
Where did he go to school? Where did he go to?
Eastman School of Music.
Eastman School of Music, that's right. He was Eastman School of Music. Then he lived in Detroit for a while, right?
That's right, before that, yeah.
And then now, is he still in New York?
He's in New York now. He went to school there after Detroit.
Have you talked to him? How's he doing?
I've not really talked to him.
Dude, I haven't talked to him in years.
I would love to talk to him. But I definitely stole him from that. Not stole him. I mean, I knew him at the university and stuff like that, but asked him to start playing in a trio with me and Colin Dubel. That was the very first trio that I ever led, you know.
Black belt in Shujitsu.
Sensei Dubel. And so, but what I'm getting at with all of this
Professor
and where we were going is that the jam session that we grew up on, which was Stu McCaskey, Michael Glenn, and Chase or Arnaldo, happened every Tuesday at Scalo Italian restaurant in Nob Hill. And they ended that jam session about 8 years ago or so, 9, 8, 7, something like that years ago. And they ended it, just because it was not really making any money. Mostly musicians were just coming in to drink water and sit in.
I was guilty of that. Stu actually called me out, and it pissed me off at the time when he did it. But to be honest with you, in hindsight, in retrospect, he had a point. But at the same time, I was like 18, 19, and I had no money.
I mean, that is an experience of going to jam sessions, and without a doubt, it is. I mean, you learn, you get older, and that jam session was such like a school for me and John and a lot of people, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. Yeah,
yep, absolutely.
That when it ended, John Maestas and Asher Barreras decided to start. decided to start the jam session up at Ben Michael's, kind of honoring or just kind of picking up the ball from where Scalo's left it. And it started on Tuesdays, but I don't think it felt right. If I remember this correctly, and I'll have to have Asher on and remind me of it later. But it eventually turned to Wednesdays, and that was in 2011. And 2012, the beginning part of that year, I was in New Orleans. And then I came back in the summer, and then in the fall, John moved to New Orleans. And so I kind of assumed the position of chordal instrument for the jam session.
Was that 2012 that he moved?
That was 2012.
Damn.
6 years ago, yeah. And then the following year, 2013, John had already, obviously been out of town for a little while. But then Asher moved out of town. He moved up to New York and then up to Maine.
Did he go to New York for jazz, to be like a jazz bassist?
I want, to my understanding, he had some connections there. And I want to say that, yeah, he went there to go work. You know what I'm saying? That's what he was doing here. And then from living in New York for a while, he came back and broke up with his girl and then went back to New York and was kind of looking for some different stuff and found some meaning in digging into his grandfather's old diaries and journals up in Maine.
That's
cool.
Visiting
his grandma.
That's what's up.
And so Asher, when he left, handed the jam session off to me. And I just kind of took
the
it
torch.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of put me in charge. And I have been in charge of it every year since, but...
Since 2012.
Since 2013.
2013.
Around there, 2013.
Didn't you pass it off to, was it D or Sammy for a little bit? I want to say, didn't you, when you were traveling?
Sammy hosted it a couple times. I mean, like, the thing is this, it's like every time I'm in town, I play the jam if I'm not, if I can. And if I'm not able to play the jam, then I have somebody else host the jam session. And so Sammy, Mickey Patton,
Mickey Patton's bad motherfucker.
Mike Olivola, Fernando Garavito, Rodney Bowe, Dimmy, Lisa Lopez. So many people have helped host it. Steve Fig, D, a lot of people have helped out in that position of me being out of town and someone needing to step in. And sometimes Ben Michael just doesn't do it. What's been really cool is that in the past year, maybe even 2 years, for the wintertime, usually it gets really slow at one point, and usually we close it down for a little bit.
Really?
And luckily, for the past year, maybe 2 years, we haven't closed down. And so it's been going strong.
Bro,
it's been awesome to see that, because it's not that that every single week we sell out, but I mean, almost every week that happens, we're able to get enough people there to continue it going, and not only continue it, happening, but get it to the point to where financially it was paying what Scalo was paying, which was all I dreamt of doing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a Wednesday night, so it's not like it's a concert show or anything. And
it pays the musicians, and it also pays the establishment that helps it, and it's good promotion for him. Like, how many people go? Like one of the patrons that always go, Coralie, a mutual friend of ours, she created a Facebook group, people that are exclusively going to go to jazz. She calls it, let's go to jazz. She calls it, are you going to jazz? It's like, yeah. Like, that's what they do, and they all come together and they rally around. And bro, like that's what's up. That's the thing that I really wish Albuquerque had more of. I wish that like Monday night there was a dedicated jam session. I wish Tuesday night there was a dedicated jam session. Wednesday, Thursday, like every night.
I would love it if there was.
Because bro, I don't know, maybe it's a phase, but that's all I want to do is I just want to go to jam sessions. But it doesn't have to be jazz every time. Maybe it could be like soul music, maybe it could be funk, maybe it could be salsa music. And I also feel that there's
I would love that, man. I don't think there is as much of a consistency of musicians and music supporters to do a thing like that here.
I believe that there can be.
I think there can be. You're right. I think there can be. I think there are niches, and there is the possibility for that to be something. But without incentive from the musicians and in collaborations, not just of the musicians, but of the musicians and of the space. Because without that space, your jam or your thing ain't anything. It's like our good friend Camilo Quiñones was for a while having these
Q sessions,
awesome things across the street from Ben Michaels on Wednesday night.
I enjoyed those.
Piggybacking
I missed
on
those.
the jam sessions, which was so fucking tight because we don't have anything that's late night here. But guess what? That was our one thing on a Wednesday night you could go do from 10 to 12.
But sometimes only like 3 people would show up. I always tried to go every single night.
It was a different experience every night. And Camilo had an idea and he executed it. And a lot of people kind of critiqued it and wished he would have done it a different way. And I can sympathize with both sides of it.
Well, his idea was the lack of an idea because he's like, I'm not going to force it. Anything, whatever it becomes is whatever. He goes, just create responsibly. That was his thing. Like whoever wanted to come in was how they could create. There was no structure to it.
And we can say this because we're all creative people and we're all doing these ideas that we have in our minds and executing them and then hopefully doing them again, doing them over and over again to better the idea and the vision. But his idea, it was called the sessions, as you referred to earlier, just for people out there to understand. And Camilo Quiñones is a wonderful percussionist and DJ and producer, and he creates all of these various beats and various loops or just kind of grooves that he's got on his computer as started sessions that he's not finished. And so the idea of the whole jam session or hang is supposed to be him to start one of his sessions and then have people just come up and do their thing. And then start a different session, find a different session, go into that.
Right.
And then a different session, go into that.
I miss those.
Now, that's a wonderful idea, but what the musicians, not myself, but what I can understand as well, is that people just wish they could start for something from the ground up. Not.
What do you mean by that?
Just play along to something that he's got already.
Right. More like a structured rhythm section.
Well, just the capacity to record and in real time create everyone's beat together, because then that's all inclusive and that brings in the audience so much deeper, not just to people jamming on a track that someone already created in their home, but some people coming together and their ideas forming, blending, melding, being recorded in real time to create this fucking awesome track, you know?
Right.
And I love that idea. Like when people brought that up to me, I was like, fuck, I did not even like think that could be a thing. And that's an awesome idea, you know? But sadly, you know, Camilo's event kind of got the plug pulled on it. And it's about the space. Like I said earlier, it's not just the incentive of the musicians and of the people trying to reach towards something and create a vision or realize this vision. It's also having a space that supports you. Yep. And believes in what you're doing.
And I think it was good for a while, but I mean, at the end of the day, like they had bartenders coming in, they had overhead, and the response just wasn't there. You know what I mean? Because we would get musicians that would come in, but there outside of that, there wasn't an audience to support the musicians for whatever reason.
I wonder what's going to happen next. You know, we'll see. Now, speaking of visions and of things, excuse me, I keep coughing or trying to clear my throat. But my initial idea of this podcast was just to have conversations and see where they go, and not having any rules or ideas or creating any niche or trying to create a pocket that isn't there already, but allowing it to be whatever it is. And with you having put out this album when you went out to Lansing, Michigan to play the show, and us having performed at the Outpost Performance Space on their local Summer Thursday series in the middle of August, and you putting out this album whenever this podcast drops, which will be right around the time that you're going to be releasing this album, we're going to be having this awesome opportunity to kind of listen to a couple tracks and not just listen to them, but to kind of talk about them and digest them and dig into them a little bit, you know. So I want to get started with that, and we're going to take a really quick pause and get everything set up for that so that we can listen to some of the tracks and from there be able to dig in, you know.
Let's do it.
All right, my man. Okay, so the first song we're going to listen to, Ryan, is called Whiskey Peace.
Whiskey Dick, as Yvonne calls it.
As Miss Yvonne calls it.
This is the horn section. This verse.
It's awesome, man.
Dude, that solo you played, man. So that guitar solo, that was Claudio's solo. And you know, it's funny because so when I played with that band in Michigan, it's like every guitar player interprets that moment differently. And his was, his name is Wayne Gerard, bad dude from Detroit, really amazing. And his interpretation of that moment for him was kind of like, for lack of a better term, like Yngwie Malmsteen, like shredding. Like that was his approach, you know what I mean? And it sounded awesome because I have a video clip that I posted on social media of him playing that, and he did a shredding solo. It was sick. Like the audience was sitting there, they were clapping and pointing at him like in the middle of his solo because it was that badass. But your interpretation of it was almost the polar opposite, which was, so it starts out 3, 4, 1. Like I don't know, man. That's like 100% you, and that's like it's unbelievably musical. It's sick, dude.
I really appreciate that, bro.
Yeah, man. And that's cool. And that's kind of like one thing that I've always respected about your guitar playing is that you're not trying to be like this flashy, over the top shredder. Like that's a thing, right? With guitar players, they want to be like shredders. Like that's never been your thing as long as I've known you for years and years and years. That's never been your thing. And what you played there, especially that lick at the end, like, man.
I appreciate it, dude. I'm just like
personality,
playing
dude.
what I feel, bro, with your music, because I don't know. I mean, I love Yngwie Malmsteen too. You know, he's a great guitar player, and I've definitely studied some of his stuff. I bought his book and got his DVD and shit like that. I mean, the DVD came in the book. You know,
you've heard of The Onion, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they
bro.
do those fake news stories, and they're like, Yngwie changed his middle name to Fucks.
Fucks Malmsteen.
I thought that was pretty funny.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I mean, I was lucky to not grow up, you know, when I was younger, but I mean, grew up in my younger days alongside an amazing guitar player who also was on that record, and we were listening to John Maestas.
Yep.
And he was a shredder, and so like
John was?
Oh yeah, bro. Like
really?
I came up, you know, loving the guitar through loving the blues. I loved Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Stevie could shred, you know what I'm saying, in his own way. But Jimmy was just more about just like doing crazy weird stuff and doing all this, you know, badass, crazy psychedelic nuts blues, you know. And the experience of like loving music through the blues allowed me to think about music more simplistic and like take a one note solo and make a one note solo or two note or three note solo work, because that was what my middle school guitar teacher was instilling in me from then into me studying jazz.
Brodsky?
Yeah, Bill Brodsky. It was so cool because at the Outpost, both my teachers, Bill Brodsky and Mr. Anthony, were there. And that experience of connecting both worlds was gratifying, but also the reason that I'm not trying to be what I'm not, right? You know, it's like
it takes a lot of maturity.
There is like what you love, and there is what you are, as well as like what you feel.
Yep.
And I think when you connect truly with like what your album is about, you know, honesty and truth, with what your own truth and honesty is, as a musician and as an artist, then like people connect with that, whatever that is. If it is some shreddy stuff like Yngwie Malmsteen, then like it is. And people around the world will learn your name, as people have, and as I know, and you know who Yngwie Malmsteen is. But that was not me. And growing up next to John, who was that, and grew up shredding, and, you know, our sophomore, junior year, like, I think it was our sophomore year, playing Eruption faster than fucking Eddie Van Halen.
What's Eruption?
Eruption is an Eddie. It's a Van. You know the band Van Halen. They have a very, very famous little guitar interlude. That's a song that Eddie Van Halen, the guitar player, shreds on. He does all this crazy tapping stuff. I'm sure you've heard it. Well, John was playing that shredding, tapping song that was super fast and crazy to play on the guitar as a sophomore in high school. At the guitar, you know, at some, you know, assembly. And eventually, you know, we became friends and stuff like that. But to have this guy that came from that, you know what I'm saying?
I think that's the best way to improve, is to have someone your age that pushes you, like getting into, because you and I are both big fans of MMA, having that person that pushes you.
Oh yeah, bro.
Like Kobe Bryant, he talked about that with Allen Iverson in the early 2000s. Yeah, when they were doing, it was the Sixers versus the Lakers, and he was like, man, Allen Iverson pushed me to be the best athlete that I could be.
Yeah. Like,
I have like a lot of trumpet players that are my peers that's that same thing. Like, I feel like that's the same thing with you and John. Like, you guys push each other musically.
Oh, absolutely, man.
I think that's like that's such a healthy competition. I wish we had a lot more of that, because that's a good thing.
It is, man. It is. And it definitely propelled us into where we're at now in a lot of ways. And yeah, it was fun doing that album with you, man. So tell me about that song, bro. I appreciate that. We kind of went on a tangent there, but
no
Whiskey
worries.
Peace is, as you were telling us at the concert at the Outpost, was a little bit about the state that you're under when you're
So
inebriated?
how
Tell us about
candid
it, bro.
how candid can I be on this?
Bro, this is explicit. It's all my podcasts are already going to be marked explicit. So come on now. I've been cursing already.
Well,
And we're drinking. Cheers, by the way. This
cheers, homie.
podcast
Shot
happens
toss.
to be, yes, endorsed by.
Okay, so I'm going to be 100% honest, and when I listen back to this, I'm probably going to regret.
Can you
me
be
saying this.
99% honest?
Nah, might as well just do 100%. Why not? In the spirit of Truth Journey. But so the name for that, like that kind of goes back to like when Jack White was talking about not being a creator of the ideas, but a conduit, a catalyst for it. And the name for Whiskey Peace came because I was in a really bad state. It was around like November, December of 2017. And pretty much I was just drinking like all the time. And basically I was heading to do a jazz gig with Thomas Primusic's band over in Las Lunas, New Mexico, at this place called the Europa Coffee House. And I was just kind of tired of feeling like shit. So I stopped by the local Chevron and I picked up some whiskey, some Crown Royale. And I had that in my pocket. And before I got on the road, I took a huge drink of it. And
Wait. You weren't drinking and driving, though, right?
Not while I was driving, but
Before.
I don't know. But basically, it's funny because like you could like it's weird these mental states that you go through, and it was a shit day. And then I had that Apple Crown, and that's my favorite whiskey, and I drank it, and then all of a sudden, like 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, okay, like I feel okay, like I was okay with what I was doing in life, I was okay with where I was going with my career, I was okay with my relationships, my friends, and then it just it was like, okay, whiskey peace, like the peace of mind that you get from whiskey, like I used to get that from weed, but I don't know. I don't really smoke weed anymore because it kind of freaks me out. But so I couldn't really call it like weed peace or anything. But like it was just the peace that came from it. So that was kind of the inspiration for the name of the song.
You also weren't smoking weed at that point, so it wasn't like weed.
Dude, I was smoking weed all the time, but it was like
right. But at that very moment when
up at that very moment,
the
I wasn't smoking
inebriation
weed.
affected you and the chill moment inspired you.
Yeah, and it's interesting how sometimes like these substances can shift your mindset into like, oh, okay, like, you know, sometimes it takes that perspective to be like, okay, life isn't that bad, and sometimes it kind of removes your ego from the moment. It kind of takes you out of the moment of taking yourself too seriously. And so that song right there was kind of like an homage to that feeling. That's why it's called Whiskey Peace.
To being drunk on whiskey.
To being drunk on whiskey. That's exactly what it's about.
Or buzzed.
Or being, well, yeah, buzzed for sure. And then I felt kind of bad because I went, you know, like that's the thing, like whiskey kind of hits you at later points. You know, you could be good for an hour and then you're like, oh man, I need another shot. And then all of a sudden you just get hit like a ton of bricks.
What is this?
And so I was doing that gig with Thomas and I was like, man, I hope I don't mess up his gig. And it went well. But no, that's what that song is about, is just like that peace of mind that comes from drinking whiskey. Whiskey
awesome.
peace.
It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So the other cool part of the album was that John came into the process. John came into
By
the recording
happenstance.
studio.
And I'm so glad he did, dude.
Bro, it was such a badass experience because John and I are like two peas in a pot. It's like we can do any gig or any genre or you know what I'm saying? Like we cover the spectrum together equally on the guitar. Although I should say that because there's a lot of gigs that he can do that I can't do. You know what I'm saying?
You think so?
Definitely. Oh yeah, definitely some metal.
I don't think you gave yourself
definitely
enough
some
credit.
metal and like some fucking shred and all that kind of stuff.
Is John a metal guy?
Bro, I'm telling you, like he grew up like a rocker. You know what I'm saying? So that being like a rocker like that, like Mike Wood can. John definitely.
Mike
sticks in
Wood,
that
badass
vein
guitarist,
much more.
band director, East Mountain High School.
He's gonna be
one of my
on
homies.
the podcast too, man.
Woo woo.
Yeah, Mike Wood's a badass.
I love Mike Wood,
But-
I really respect him as a musician.
But the experience, like I was speaking about earlier, of taking a band, which is the band that's on the album. Tell everyone that's it's Paul Palmer the third on the drums. We already talked
So
about.
Paul Palmer the third on the drums, Arthur Metters on the bass,
Metters.
Steve Figueroa on piano and keys, yourself on guitar, and then John Maestas on guitar. Kind of like, how would I describe his role? His role was kind of like textures rather than rhythm and harmony. His was textures. Colors. I think that's a great way of putting it. And he pretty much did it.
Chris Cushman we heard as well, I think.
And Chris Cushman, he did all the horn parts. He did all the sax horn parts, and then myself on the trumpet parts. And bro, that's cool. Like, I'll look back on this album forever as like something like, man, that was a good time with my homies.
I mean,
like,
that's what I was just about to bring up. But it was like, it's the homies. It was all the homies like playing a bunch of these shows together over the last couple weeks in June, and then jumping into the studio.
Yeah, we did.
And John just kind of trickled in, was just like, oh, what are y'all? Ooh, all right, I think I'm going to do this and this and this and do this spaceship sound. And it just like worked so awesome. And you were so open to it, which was so cool because like you were speaking about earlier of the experience of opening yourself up and accepting that like, oh, this can be this way. Like, it doesn't have to be the way that I thought. And like, oh, actually you're right. Like, oh shit. Then it opens up this door and this whole new perspective comes through. You know what I'm saying? Like, comes through the fog. And that experience is not only, but it is in one of the ways that it is granted to you is by collaborative work. And like fucking bringing in those other characters and those other personalities does wonders.
It does wonders. And John kind of came into that whole fold by happenstance because he's like, hey, man, we got that tribute concert that you guys were doing to Michael Anthony. He's like, hey, man, can you film it? Because, he wanted me to film and do some editing. And I was like, yeah, man. And he goes, well, what do I owe you? And I was like, well, tell you what, like, bro, just play on my album and I'll edit everything and do everything for free. And it worked out so nice because when we were performing, we did Las Cruces and we did Santa Fe Music on the Hill, and to prepare for going into the studio. And when we were doing those shows, like, I was already 100% happy with everything that was the way it was sounding, everything that the band was doing together, minus John.
And I was also kind of like, a part of me, I'm not going to lie, was just like, oh shit, how is John going to fit into all of this? But then the other part of my brain was just like, what am I talking about? Like, John is the most musical person, besides like Artie and stuff like that I know. And not just musical, but also like musically
sensitivity
aware person. Yeah.
He's very sensitive for sure.
His sensitivity, his ability to think above the situation. That's why he's a producer. That's why he's such a great producer, and why his ability to navigate that has offered him the ability to act as producer on many people's records in New Orleans, which is amazing for him because he's dreamt of doing that. And he helped me do that. He was co-producer on my album.
And your album sounds awesome, bro. It really
I appreciate
does.
That, man.
Sounds good, man.
But I mean, his touch is very noticeably there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if we were to do a digest kind of sort of in a way like we're doing with this, I mean, this is a very dragged out digestion, and we're only doing a part-time digestion, and then we're only kind of digging into part-time of the songs. But how about let's dig into the next song, because we've got 4 songs that we'd like to dig through and listen to. That was Whiskey Peace.
Let's check
only
out
a little bit of it. What do you want to
Let's check out Petty Mind, because this kind of ties into the gospel theme that we were talking about earlier. So I wrote this song a couple of weeks before the Jazz Fest that we played last year for the New Mexico Jazz Festival. And so this song came about. This is an interesting song because it came about. I was in Denver with Yvonne, my girlfriend, and we went and checked out this band out of New Orleans called Big Sam and Funky Nation.
Woo,
awesome.
My boy Alfred Jordan playing the drums, who's on my record.
And so I was just I listened to everything that they did, and they had a really cool groove. I don't know the name of the song, and I've tried to find it, but they had a really cool groove, and that groove served as the inspiration for this song called Petty Mind. And then for a while, I felt kind of bad about this song putting out for multiple reasons. A, because I felt like a trumpet player ripping off gospel music, and I felt like a trumpet player ripping off the sound, the groove of that Big Sam Funky Nation song. But I don't know, through the own personality that you guys brought to the song, that Artie and you and John and everybody brought to the song, and then a lot of my influences, like I put an envelope filter on the trumpet a la RH Factor. Yeah. That Roy Hargrove did with RH Factor.
Right.
And Mike Wood hooked it up with the envelope filter pedal. And I don't know, this song, out of all the songs on the album, this is the one that I'm most proud of how this song turned out. So this is called Petty Mind.
Yo, Paul played his ass off on that shit.
I was saying, like, I was so proud of how Paul played on that song, because it's like, as much as I have my musical journey, I've been a part of his musical journey since we've been playing together since 2013, 2014-ish. So like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm proud because I've seen how he's developed and how he's grown and how he's improved and how his mindset. And I mean, I'm not going to claim responsibility for that, but I've been able to witness that firsthand. And like, I don't know, it's fun to watch. I don't know. It's I
I agree, man. Paul is quite a character to follow, and not just follow, but like really see where the evolution of everything kind of goes with him. Because Paul, man, he came up from church. His father is a preacher.
I didn't know that until the Outpost show.
Isn't that crazy? You didn't know that?
I didn't know that because remember during the Outpost show, I said one of the funny things that Paul does. I said in front of the audience, I said one of the funny things that Paul does is he takes the name of the songs and he does what a gospel preacher does. So if the song's Petty Mine, he goes, Petty Mine, yeah. And then he's like, man, you did that right in front of my dad. He's a pastor. And I was like, really? Like, I had no idea. And I hope it wasn't offensive. It's something funny that, I hope it's funny. It's something funny that Paul does.
A part of me did look back at Paul and was just like, what is he thinking right now? What is he thinking right now? Because I knew.
Is that bad? Why is that bad?
It wasn't that it was bad. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know at that moment that you didn't know that his dad was a preacher.
I had no clue until he told me, he goes, yeah, my dad's a pastor, man. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I don't feel like it was anything negative. It's just, it's what you do whenever there's a song title, he just sings it out like a Southern gospel preacher.
It is just funny. I think Paul is a perfect like representation though of someone who has come out of his cocoon, you know, someone who's come out of his nest of growing up with the music, growing up with the belief system, growing up also with his loves, you know, which were funk. You know what I'm saying? He grew
funk
up
and gospel. Yep.
James Brown and all that shit. All that funky music that...
All that shit? How dare you?
I say shit with all.
It's a term of endearment.
I say all that good shit. You know what I'm talking about? Like shit I refer to. Anyways, all right. What I'm getting at is that Paul is. What were you gonna say? Speaking of what?
Well, speaking of James Brown, when we were we did a recording session with Isaac Aragon in Winter Park, Colorado, and we were driving back. D Brown, the keyboard player.
Shout out to Isaac.
Isaac Aragon, amazing vocalist, someone who I believe in, and I see big things coming for his future.
Gotta get him on the podcast.
Yes, dude. Isaac would be good to have. Dude, he could tell you about that record deal that he...
I'm going to get him on the podcast.
Get him on the podcast. But D is like, hey, man, you should check out this interview that James Brown did. And it was... So,
are you talking about the one where he's coked out?
Yes. And then it was all about him.
A man's world.
It was all about him. The I think it was CNN. And it was all about them, like as journalists love to do. It was all about them trying to corner him into making him uncomfortable, and trying to, because I guess he had some like domestic violence charges against him or something like that. And then the way he was just so funny. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a sex machine." Yeah, and he's like, "I love love, and I make love. I make love good too." And just the way he turned it from this almost like a witch hunt of them trying to make him feel uncomfortable. And then at the end of the day, she's like, "James, are you feeling great?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm feeling great." And it was just so funny to watch. But I don't know. I guess it's one of those you've had to been there moments, because I'm not doing a good job of telling the story.
If you haven't seen that clip of James Brown supposedly, allegedly high on cocaine and doing an interview on morning radio or
that dude did not TV. He did not give a fuck for that interview. And I really, the fact that he was on national television, he's just like, you know what? I wonder what he did before, whether it was cocaine or whether it was maybe uppers.
That's what I'm saying.
He's just like, who cares? Who gives a shit? National television, millions of people watching. I don't give a fuck.
Yo, but getting back to Paul and getting back to James Brown through all of this that we're talking about, Paul, you know, I knew him as, you know,
Sugar on Top.
Well, initially I knew him as the all-state drummer for the third band from Rio Rancho High School, which is where he was from. I believe he and I graduated the same year, 2008.
And he was the third drummer?
He was the third chair, all-state drummer. The third or the second, or the first all-state drummer was this guy from El Dorado named Lawrence, who Paul says, man, I attribute my career to Lawrence, because had he not given up the drums, I would not be working as much as I am. That's what Paul told me himself, which was like, what?
I disagree
No,
with that.
I know. But what I'm getting at is that, like, Paul, from that era of knowing him as... Yes, a drummer that played in the Rio Rancho jazz band that eventually played in the all-state jazz band, and then eventually went to University of New Mexico and played in the jazz band as well as the orchestra and the drum line and did all of those things. And I eventually met him in jazz band. He was sharing the chair with Enrique Chavez, who came into town from Puerto Rico.
El Peru.
And PP3, at around the time that I, got to play with him a little more in jazz band, wonderful trombone player up in Santa Fe, Ben Finberg, he and I talked about an idea that he had, a desire that he had of wanting to start a funk band. And so
Sugar on Top.
I asked Paul if he wanted to be the drummer, if he did funk music, if he liked funk music, and he was just like, do I what? Huh?
Have you seen The Color Mustard?
How you gonna ask me that? No, it's not just that. Come on now. It's like I had a love for it. It was like he was like, bro, like I don't just love funk, like I love what funk truly is. And so when he came to that band, it was just like the layer of pocket and everything. Like I was emceeing a lot during that band and around that time. And I'd always make jokes about how Paul had to special order his pants, his jeans, because of how large his pockets were in his pants.
He's got a good pocket for sure.
And for you non-musicians, I'm referring to Paul Palmer III. His drummer's pocket, his groove, his feel, the way that he makes you feel when he plays a groovy pocket as you were just listening to on the track. And the way that he's able to do that is so wonderful, so fat, so groovy. And by doing that and by having a deep pocket, as musicians refer to having a deep groove or a very funky feel to your music, not necessarily funky referring to the music of funk, but groovy feel, Paul Palmer has that. And those jeans are special ordered, I swear.
He's a bad dude. And one of my dearest friends too. I've never met a more hardworking individual, honest. It's funny because like after we finish a gig, it's like when we did the Outpost gig, I was like, all right, everybody, we're going to
Brickyard.
Right. We're gonna get pizza and beer. And some of us had a few more beers than maybe we should have. But I've never seen Paul take a drink of alcohol. Like homie is like,
nor will you ever probably.
No.
I mean, Paul.
Oh, I will. That's if
I have something to say about it.
That's my life goal.
I'm going to get Paul to listen to this podcast. Paul, we're going to change. We're going to do something to you.
One of these days we're going to be doing a gig and I'm going to get Paul drunk. You watch.
No.
I won't tell anybody about it except me and him.
Not me, Paul. It wasn't me. Mr. Palmer, Mrs. Palmer listening out there.
Ambrosia. Sorry, Ambrosia.
But seeing Paul's evolution, man, from Sugar on Top and playing in that funk band and playing out to marrying Ambrosia and then getting a gig after he graduated from UNM at a music school. And Ambrosia, after he had a kid, basically, creating this home for him that kind of made him turn off his mind or his desire to want to play out. So he stopped playing in Sugar on Top, quit the band, and not only did he quit the band, but he dropped out of the idea of performing music for money. And it wasn't until a year, 2 years later, maybe it wasn't until he had his second kid. I can't remember exactly. I'm going to have Paul on the podcast because I definitely have dreamt about that. With how much he talks, you know about that. But once he started gigging and going out and performing, it was like all of a sudden the waterfall just broke loose. Because it wasn't just Paul was playing this gig and that gig and this gig and that gig. It was like Paul was like, all gigs are welcome. And now he's playing New Mexican music.
He's not a musical
in Southern
snob.
Colorado. Like he plays everything.
He plays, I think that's a good way to describe Paul, is that he plays everything. Like I had that salsa band that I put together.
Even if he can't, he's going to try his best and he's going to
Well, that was the thing I told him. I was like, hey, Paul, like I have this salsa band gig that I need to do. I said, I'm gonna defer to you. Is this something you want to do? Are you up for the challenge? He goes, yeah. And then Steve Figueroa.
When you put it like that, right?
Right. No, I mean I put the onus in his corner. It's like, listen, is this something that you want to do? And then I talked to Steve Figueroa and he's like, and he called me and he's like, hey man, you have to give your hats off to Paul. not only is he playing it, but he's playing the styles, the percussion and the drum set. Like playing drum set in a salsa setting is different. It's
one thing
to go to I'm not a drummer. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But to go from playing funk music and soul music, and then going into a salsa setting, to me, that's something that would be very hard to do as a drummer, because the rhythms are different, and the feel is different, because like salsa music is all about not on the one. It's all about that tumbao. Everything is on the offbeats, whereas soul music and funk music is all about the 2 and the 4. And to me, to be able to balance those worlds and to go back and forth effortlessly, as Paul is able to do, and the fact that he learned all the hits, like whenever I have a gig and I give him charts, like I don't ever have to worry about whether or not he's going to learn the material.
Paul's like that. He's like
the hardest working dude I've ever met.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna say. He's like the kind of cat that, like, you put a challenge in front of him, he's not just gonna meet it, but he's gonna like try and meet it to the point to where you're gonna call him back.
A lot of people don't have that.
Nope.
A lot of people don't have that. What do you think that is? Like, why?
I don't know.
Like, he's not willing to shy away from a challenge like that. Like, because some people look at a challenge
each one
and
of us has
like,
the capacity to have that, but I don't think each one of us acts on that. You know what I'm saying? I think Paul has the family behind him and the reason to be working as much as he's working.
Do you think that's a thing? And
Paul's
absolutely. Probably listening to this. He's like, these dudes, they don't know what they're talking about. But I mean, I think that's interesting that you said that. Like, because his family probably motivates him a lot to be a provider, because he takes that very seriously.
It's not only that, but he feels free to perform and do music. You know what I'm saying? And so his day job, to my understanding, I know there's so much work that goes into it, but he's probably gotten the flow of it to be able to give the time and attention to shedding his music that he's got to do, you know? And so, man, like, freaking, I did a gig with Paul up in Santa Fe where it was me, him, and Colin. It was old Sugar on top rhythm section, you know what I'm saying? Part-time without John, you know? But
Sugar.
We just played songs all night, and fucking Paul sang his ass off, man. Paul was singing his
and he
booty
sings.
off. Yeah. Hey, we're actually going to take a pause here. I think we might have someone at the door. And we're back.
Whoop, whoop.
Now, what I was just to wrap up what I was saying is that Paul is a consummate lover of all things music, growing up in the church, as well as just growing up as a lover of all musics. Now getting to perform it, it's like there are no rules or boundaries for him. You know,
I agree. Respect for that, homie.
But all right, let's get off Paul's nuts for a second and let's play some more. Let's play some more music, bro, because you were talking about some of the other. I love Paul. You know what I'm saying? Paul, you know I love you. PP3.
That was funny.
I hope you're listening, bro.
That was funny.
What do we listen to?
I'm not on this.
Petty
whatever.
Mind.
Let's do, what else you got in that list?
Never really said.
Penny Thoughts.
Okay.
Thoughts. So can I preface this? Or
yes, absolutely. Okay. You, come on.
So.
You ain't, come on.
So I sent this song to a bunch of different radio promoters to promote satellite radio nationally all around. It cost, for those of you that know, I'm going to drop some information on you. It cost $3,000, anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000, just to hire a radio promoter to promote it to smooth jazz radio across the nation. And then what you also do is and they're actually just starting to go away from this. For like a couple of years, when I first started doing radio promotion, they would have me create physical CDs, and I would physically mail CDs, singles, out to all of the 200 whatever stations that they have on their promo list. And they're now finally starting to do it digitally, which is awesome, because that saves like about $1,000. Because to have them manufactured, to have them mailed out, it's like $500 to mail out 200 different CDs. And so this song is called Penny Thoughts. And so the name of the song actually came through when I was recording with Kevin Herrig on his new CD. He's a wonderful singer-songwriter. If you get a chance, go check out Kevin Herrig. You should get him on the podcast too if you get a free. He's awesome, dude. But this song came about because we were recording, and for some reason, like, the term "a penny for your thoughts" came to mind, and then so I thought, oh, that'd be cool to name a song like "Penny Thoughts," like these, a penny for your thoughts. Okay, well, you gave me a penny. Here's my penny thoughts. And so this is a song that I'm going to be putting out to radio, and it's a little bit different, but Claudio had a say in how this was kind of written, as did Artha and Thomas as well. So this is Penny Thoughts.
That was killing, bro.
Thanks, homie.
What's the name of that track again?
Penny Thoughts.
I know I played on it and stuff, but you know, it's like the tracks, they all kind of blend together, especially because Petty Mind and Penny Thoughts.
I hear you, bro. No, man, that one was cool. That was something we worked on back in, was it like February? February of 2018.
It's such a trip working on music with you, man, because like it's such a like always a spur of the moment vibe, which is so tight. But it's like get home, you know, it's like doing some shit, you know, Montaño's chilling on the couch. It's like I come over, I'm just like, what's up, man? All right, what's happening, you know?
Like, hey, man, I got this idea I need your help with. What would you do here? And then it turns into, it's like, hey, let's call Artie.
And it's like, all right, yeah. Like, what you think? All right. I'm like, all right, let me get my guitar right now. It's like, shh, let's do it. And some nights it's like, you're like, I'm like, yeah. Like, let me just go to my room for a little bit. And then it's like, but when those things do happen, man, it's so cool to see how they kind of flourish into ideas that eventually birth songs or kind of finish complete ideas of yours, I should say, which really is so cool of a, like it's such a thing that happens that like when you get together with Artie, you know, it's like, what you got? And he's like, well, what if we did this on it? You know?
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden it takes new form. And then, man, that stuff is so awesome because you're like, it's like, that was kind of my birth, but like not just my birth, but then it's like all of these other influences came in and affected it to have this totally different flavor now.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about that song is that was one of the very few songs that I've written where the melody was the very first component of it. That part in the beginning.
You usually always write harmony first?
Sometimes it usually starts out with like, usually the first thing is a groove. Like, okay, I really like this vibe, this groove, this feel. And then I'll sit down at the piano and kind of come up with a riff or kind of something harmonically that I kind of dig. And then from there, I'll sometimes write a melody on top of that.
So most times it starts from a groove?
I would say 95% of the time it starts from a groove.
Wow.
And then
How
that
interesting,
one,
man.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of why I would struggle with melodies for a while, is because it's like,
that's such a weird place to start from, especially you being a melodic instrument, not a rhythmic or even a harmonic instrument or instrumentalist, even though you do play the piano and you write a lot of the songs, you know, the initial piano parts, and then kind of have some other influences of some bad motherfuckers like D. Brown or Steve Figueroa or, you know, Robert Mueller or whoever else is around, influence your harmonic ideas. You know,
Absolutely.
It's like I definitely always start from harmony, bro. Like I almost all of my songs start from a couple chords and I'm like, well, that's a vibe. Like this chord to this chord is tight, and then this chord to this chord and this chord. Then it's like maybe I can move through, you know, and then
groove comes after, or then
well,
melody,
for a long time I was using a loop pedal. You know what I'm saying? Or even before the loop pedal, I should say, because man, when I was younger, I had a recording set up when I was in middle school because I loved writing songs about girls. But I mean, I would just like write songs and record them and like then play them on the phone.
Did that work? Did that work? Writing the songs about, like, you'd be like, hey man, this girl that you're trying to court, you're like, hey, I wrote this song about you.
It was what it was, but I mean, like the effect of like sitting down in my room, kind of not just like sitting down, but like locking myself up in my room and like overnight just making it a playground, a virtual playground that was coming alive on my screen as I could see the sound waves come alive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And to nowadays kind of do that in a totally different manner is just like, it's a trip, man, you know?
Yeah, no, it is a trip, dude. I hear you.
Yeah.
And it's
because I write a lot more in the way that you write now. It's not that way of like recording music and then listening to it and kind of writing on top of that or adding on, you know, as other overdubbed parts or whatever, or getting a loop station like I had when I was in my first couple of years at university, and I was writing songs which, you know, I hope to release those songs. Songs for me take a long time to release. I'm sure for you, you have a process of it too. You know?
Absolutely.
But
they're special. But I also think, like, kind of getting back to what we were talking about of like relinquishing control. It's just like sometimes if they end up good, they end up good. If they end up whatever, then they end up whatever. But just releasing it, because I think it doesn't do our careers any good to just sit on material.
That's
it's
very
like,
true,
why not put it out? And that's a hard place to get to. But I think the more and more,
it's so vulnerable. Like you put yourself out there, and like we as artists embrace so much of who we are and what we actually put out there as our own, that such a half pipe to push down or a cliff to jump off. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's like, I should say.
No, it is. But I think one of the things that I've really gotten good at doing is just not giving a fuck. Because
that's good. In our later age, we need a little bit more of that, because you see people in their stories of like fucking Jimmy in all the discography and all the work that he did until he was 27. I'm gonna be 29 next month. Mm-hmm. So it's crazy to think about the people that died in their early 20s, like Tupac Shakur when he was 27, and
Amy Winehouse.
In the discographies and the work that they did up to that point, and how prolific they were.
Absolutely,
it's amazing.
Brian Wilson did Good Vibrations when I think he was like 24 or 26 or something like that. Like, and that song is like straight up genius.
When you see stuff like that and you realize the age and you're like, what age am I at? You're like, oh fuck.
But it's nice. It's a nice kick in the ass.
It is. That's what I'm saying.
And just goes back to like, not because on social media I see people and they put out something and the way they put it out, I'm like, man, that is so loud and that is so braggadocious. But
what do you mean by that?
By the way they portray themselves, the way there's what I perceive to be a lack of humility. It's just there's a lot of arrogance behind what they do. But at the end of the day, it's like, I also have respect for what they're doing, because they're like, they don't give a fuck. Or maybe maybe it comes off like they don't give a fuck. But, dude, when I first put out my first single for radio, dude, I was so, every time I'd hear it, I'd just be like watching people's reactions, and then like, oh, how does this sound? And I tried to listen to it with fresh ears because I cared so much. And then now there's a lot of things where I'm just like, who gives a fuck? Because like John Mayer actually talked about something when he was doing an interview. He goes, not everybody cares. And for John Mayer to realize that he has an audience of worldwide millions of people, and he realizes that not everybody cares. And then in perspective to put where we're at, it's like, no one gives a shit. So then why not go with it 110%? And that's something within the past couple months that I've been like, okay, you know what? Who gives a fuck?
Why not? But that's right. That's right.
And that's a hard place to get to. And it's not that I don't struggle with it too at times, but it's just like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
Because no one cares.
It's definitely a different experience to be putting music out, you know? Mm-hmm. Not to say that I've been doing it a long time or have done a lot of it, but now that I've put songs out there, to just think about the next song or the next movement of songs as a unit that I'm going to put out into the world, which I hope to do sometime next year, and definitely put out a single before the year's out. That is part of my contract that I have with my record label, Bubble Bath Records.
Bubble Bath Records, New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yo, woo-woo. Rep. But it's definitely an experience to get the right cats, and to do something we were talking about off air a little bit was the experience of having the cats really meld your music. You know what I'm saying? And like influence not just how it comes together, but then really like some ideas that you're just like initially like, what? And then you're like, oh, and it opens up a whole nother portals. And I love that shit. You know, it's like the guys in New Orleans did that for me in the same way that Artie and PP3 did, you know, at that point where your Truth Songs album or your Truth
Journey.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely.
Album came together, you know? And that's kind of how my album came together, I would say, you know, in that way of, not to put it on me, but I'm just saying, like,
You gonna drink my water, homie?
I was gonna drink your water, bro. That's the problem with having too many drinks on the podcast table. What I'm getting at though is that like it's inspiring to see that, because I resemble that and mirror that experience of being like, yo, that's awesome.
So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, if we can kind of digress just for a second.
Yeah.
So this past weekend was the West Side Summerfest, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
so
man. Y'all played your butts off.
Dude, that was a really strong learning experience. So
how so? What do you mean it was a really strong?
And I wanted to get your opinion on it. So the headliner was Ozil Motley. The band right before Ozil Motley was a local band called Red Light Cameras.
Oh yeah.
And then before that was Arthur's band, Citizens of Tape City. Right. And then before that, and then to open the festival was Isaac Aragon and The Healing. And so, as with, you know, it was a span of like 5 hours, like for 4 bands, right? Five and a half hours. So at various points, there was, you know, obviously it starts off not a lot of people attending, and then as we get to the headliner, Ozil Motley, it was probably about 4,000 people. And so I played with Isaac Aragon and I played with Citizens of Tape City, filmed a little bit of Tape City when I wasn't playing with them, and then filmed some of Red Light's Cameras set, and then I filmed all of Ozil Motley's set. And so to be to listen, like I really believe in Isaac and his voice and his sound, and I really believe in Citizens of Tape City, and that was my first time hearing the Red Light Cameras, and I really like Ozomali, and it was the way people responded to music, because like I hear Isaac, and granted there weren't as many people there as there were for Ozomali, but I feel like people should have been like at the stage, like wanting to get closer to that experience. But that was like when his first show in about a year, because he's, you know, refining his sound and putting out new albums and trying to find his own personal truth journey. And then like Citizens of Tape City, who I think you and I agree as musicians, like we hear them with musician ears, and what they're doing is really, really unique, and their grooves are awesome, and like there's good energy, and I don't know, I really like what they're doing. And then you have the Red Light Cameras, who are good musicians, and their sound is more like rock, like indie rock, and they have a legit fan base. They had people like right up there at the stage and interacting with their energy.
They're a popular band in town.
Yeah, but it's interesting because like we listen with musicians' ears, and I feel like Citizens of Tape City should have had the same amount of people, you know, kind of front and center vibing off of their music. Same with Isaac Aragon, the way that the Red Light Cameras were. Because like the Red Light Cameras from a musical standpoint, they're good musicians. And then Citizens at Tape City, like the musical sophistication, I think is, and that's not like a disrespect to the Red Light Cameras, but like the music of Citizens of Tape City has it's a lot more intricate and a lot more harmonic variation. And then the Red Light Cameras have a powerful, like a more powerful presentation and a more powerful sound, I guess, because it's like rock and it's like straight in your face. And that their front, that lady, what's her name?
Amanda Michon.
Amanda Michon.
Shout out to Amanda.
Yeah, she's a badass like front person.
Yeah, she's
like
a huge personality. She's
good energy.
She's got a wonderful freaking voice,
too.
And has such a huge presence on stage, man.
Yeah, people.
That band. Let me tell you, because I agree with what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And I understand where you're coming from in terms of speaking of the variety of musics and the reception of the audience. But first of all, the time plays a big factor into it.
Absolutely.
And second of all, when you have a presentation of music and you have a larger net by having a type of music that calls out or speaks to more variety, like much more people in the audience than some very specific music. As your good friend, our friend Yvonne, who's your girlfriend, said, not to call right on it, but the music had a sense of chaotic.
And not in a bad way.
It's not to say that's a bad thing at all with Citizens of Tape City. I mean, those guys are my boys. I love them. But their music is such a blend of so many music and is crazy. And it's meant to be that because it's meant to have an effect on you. And crazy or chaotic have a negative connotation, but within music there's a purpose of that music or that doing that, like grunge rock or like like very spiritual music as it gets very deep and crazy. It's like everything has an experience and a reason, not a reason, but like a cause and effect, I should say. And when you've got a band like Citizens of Tape City coming up and doing their thing, everyone's trying to figure it out. What is this? You know what I'm saying?
I'd say that's fair.
And not to diss them. I mean, these guys are doing amazing stuff, but they're blending like rapping, like some soul, some funk, some R&B, some rock, some metal. Funk. Like they are a mixture of like everyone from like the internet to like Sade to like, like all kinds of the nerd to all kinds of different influences that are a certain taste. And not to say that that doesn't appeal bigger, but then you've got this band that almost speaks like garage band rock. That's kind of what I refer to Red Light Cameras, and not saying that in a bad way or a negative connotation at all. But they appeal to people. Not just do they appeal to people, but Amanda, their front woman, is the reason that band is so popular, as well as captures every single audience they play in front of.
They have good energy for sure.
Because their presentation is not just listen to our music, it's cool, listen to our thing. I mean, Artie and Joseph go in, you know what I'm saying? Especially,
and Mike Wood.
Especially Artie. Yeah, oh my God. The combination of Artie and Mike Wood is probably my favorite because the two of them are true rockers back in the day. So like they've got the guitars hanging down low and they're both doing like, it's like they're synchronized, like they freaking choreographed it. You know what I'm saying? But they're just so good at it and it's so natural for them. But when you've got Amanda going up there, the band is kind of doing their own version of that in their own way. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they're rocking out and doing their own thing, but they're totally into it. Mm-hmm. And Amanda steals the show.
She's cute too.
She's gorgeous, man. She's a gorgeous Filipina woman. You know, she is a wonderful singer that comes out there and just captures the audience by going out there and having like their attention from the second she gets out there to the second she gets off the stage. And I've admired that about every single show I've seen with them. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that their music is complex or is anything crazy. I mean, it's just rock and simple music. So, like I said, it appeals to music because it appeals to people because it's fun, because it's got this type of bounce and this rhythm and these types of
energy.
Songs that make you want to move and get up and dance or jump. And they jump on the stage, so they make you want to do it. And Amanda conducts the audience in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but
it's amazing.
I felt that Citizens of Tape City had that bounce as well.
They do, my man. But there's such a first of all, you already addressed this, but. Red Light Cameras has probably one of the biggest followings in town. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, for like rock and for that kind of music.
Just for a band, period.
Just for bands in general, they've got a really, really big draw. Mm-hmm. And they've got some heavy hitters in their band. I do believe the bass player Barney is also the gentleman that books or has some hand in booking a couple of venues in town, and so. Their presence in town, as well as their actual presence on stage when they take the stage, is big. And not to say that Citizens of Tape City isn't, but they don't have a following, first of all.
They're newer.
They don't have that crowd of people that isn't just Joseph's cousin and some of his family members that are like in the front audience. Like
I would be in the front.
Yelling for them.
If I wasn't on stage, I would be in the front.
I love their shit. I was in the audience whenever I saw them at Summerfest a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And so...
last year.
I'm not saying that Citizens Tape City doesn't have that. They just they're still cultivating
their
not to say their sound, because they've got such an interesting sound, but it is such a niche. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And amidst a soul singer who's doing his own thing with basically the same band, but you know, just like a soul sound. And then to have Citizens Tape City come up and do their thing, which is this crazy chaotic music, and then have Red Light Cameras, which kind of evens it out with some rock. You know what I'm saying? And then have Ozamali with some Latin rock and whatever they do, you know.
Bro.
But it's like, not to say that they were the oddballs out of the lineup. You know what I'm saying?
I would agree with that.
And so it's not to say that their music is not great or that Isaac's wasn't, because then that factor of timing comes in. Because Isaac had people there, and Isaac definitely had people getting up and dancing, especially in the last couple songs. Kush's wife was calling me out for not getting up and dancing on that last song. I see you, Claudia. Why aren't you dancing? I was like, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I just like, and maybe this is me trying to be an idealist, but it's like I hear like with Isaac, homie has a beautiful voice and very controlled and very like he doesn't miss notes and he's not over the place. He has really good sense of pitch.
Yeah.
It's just good phrasing, good tone. Like to me, you put a video of him singing online and it's like, how are people not sharing that all the time?
I mean, I don't think that it works like that nowadays.
Right.
Montaño, you know more than anybody that we are in the information era and there's an overload. Like our senses are overloaded all the time. Mm-hmm. And so unless something becomes viral and has that feeling of being viral, like you see it, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's got that magic number underneath it. You know what I'm saying?
The likes.
Yeah.
The likes and the views.
Likes or shares or
whether or not it's a heart or whether or not it's an actual thumb.
But I mean, like at the end of the day, like part of me is like, who gives a fuck? Like that perspective that our friend John Maestas relates to me all the time, that our mutual friend John Rangel up in Santa Fe taught us that you have to have a healthy attitude, a healthy sense of fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're not like fuck you, like give me my money, then like you're just gonna let people walk all over you to some extent, as well as musically on the bandstand and when you're doing stuff improvisationally or even just presence and directing and all that kind of stuff. You know, the rhythm or the climax or just the motion of the music. And so, not to say that like he shouldn't have that, or that we shouldn't think that like fuck you, you know, or that we shouldn't be thinking like, why isn't this shit going viral? Like those are all natural things to be thinking, and there's nothing wrong with any of them. But it just is what it is. I think Isaac is building up his thing.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? He's only been doing it a couple years.
Yep.
You know, and not to say that I've been doing it more years. I mean, I've been playing music many more years than
But your brand has been around
as
for
well.
a while.
Yeah, as well as just being a sideman. And so from being a sideman as that is what I still am to eventually putting out my own stuff. It was much later, so I'm much newer at it too. But I do know that, you know what I'm saying, he's just building it up. It takes a long time, as well as it takes a lot of support and serious fans that support you, because then those fans that support you share it, and then you find other fans that support you even more and they share it, and it's like what happened to you. It's like, I mean, I saw the effects of those years of when your songs went on the radio and people, like, you'd put something out and you'd be like, please share and please support it. And bro, you get like 100 something shares or 200 something shares. It's be like, what the fuck, man? You know, it's like I put something out and be like, I try to do the same thing. I'd be like, please share. It's like 3 shares.
I mean, well, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's all relative.
But
though.
it's not even about that. What I'm saying is that it takes time to build up
For sure.
to that point in your career to where you get stuff from your audience by having given them all of these things and by them having bought into, like you said earlier, your brand. We don't like to think about it like that, but there is that aspect of the business. True. And Isaac is building that. And I love that he's doing that whole soul and the healing. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm happy that he's starting to get a better band. You know, I look forward to seeing where the music continues to grow from. He is a badass artist, and I admire him like a motherfucker, you know, and have been watching him for a minute, you know what I'm saying? Even though we like just now started meeting each other, you know what I'm saying? I've been eyeing him for a minute, you know, and so.
Did I introduce you to him? Or?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you were the initial guy that introduced me to him, and then Sean Umstead was playing in his band. And he said that the other day at the Outpost. He was like, yo, I thought about the other day, I think I met you a while ago, right? With Sean Umstead, right? I was like, yeah, bro.
That's crazy.
So it was cool that he connected the dots, but I mean, like, you know.
Yeah. For sure, but I mean, I guess for me, it's just the process, the time that it takes. Like it's really frustrating.
It is frustrating, but you got to give it time, like anything. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Because it doesn't happen overnight. As well as if
for some people, it does though.
No, but if it does happen overnight, what I'm trying to get at is that, like, it's better to build on the long run. You know what I'm saying? Because you build people that will stay with you throughout your career, and then you have longevity. If you just like have that first initial hit and look for all those initial people and then come out and then you don't have support on your second, third, fourth album, then it's like, what good was all that? You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Initial fame and boom and whatever, if you paid for it or whatever publicity or I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm just throwing out ideas.
Right.
But
no, I hear you, bro. But I look at Ozomatli, so they've been around for 23 years or something.
Yeah.
And
trumpet player I heard loves a gig.
Yeah. He it was the fact that they have a huge following in Albuquerque, and they the fact that they get right up at front of the stage and they support every time and they stay around for the whole show. That's actually something I noticed about them, is that like towards the end of a show, you always get people leaving, you know, but they had people, at least 4,000 people just right there the entire night.
I mean, they're solid, like a huge name.
A huge name. They're like and to get to that point, like, it's like to me, it's like, man, I would love to be able to do that. But it's like, to me, that's a hard place to get to, because it doesn't happen to everybody.
We were talking about this earlier in the podcast, in the sense of thinking about, it is fun to initially do all these things, but then you think about doing it 280 days in the year or 310 days of the year.
I do it.
I would do it too. You know what I'm saying? But you just think about how long. You just think about how long they've been around. You don't think about all the years that they were doing it in other projects and in other things before.
Right.
So like this idea of being on the road is a lifelong journey, and that statement that Doug Lawrence even talks about is like, you know, the playing is for free. You know what I'm saying? You get paid to travel and to get to the gig.
Yeah. No, I mean, shoot, and it's a lot of their set is still comprised of their earlier stuff from like 1998, like their first CD and their first couple albums, and they have new music. They just put out a CD last year. I think they did one song off their new CD, maybe a few more, but it's interesting.
But you know, it doesn't matter. It's like right. Especially even like with the Rolling Stones, who are still to this day touring. People don't want to hear their new shit.
Do you think Mick Jagger's still smashing?
Is the Pope Catholic?
Dude, could you imagine being 75 and just still like, well,
yes,
good for him, man.
Yes, I can imagine being 90 something. The guy from Buena Vista Social Club inspired me.
Is he what,
He
like
was
90 or what?
in the documentary. He was in his mid 90s and saying he was like, I still dream of having one more kid, and he did before he died. Isn't that crazy?
Damn, dude, still smashing at 95.
So, anyways, getting back to the music though, man. Let's play some more music, man. Like, what else? We have one more song that we can get into listening to. So, tell us what we're gonna listen to, man.
This is called "Never Really Said," and the song was originally written for someone very close to me. That it's kind of, you have that relationship where there's genuine love, but you can't really tell them that you love them. It's kind of a weird dynamic, and it's not because you don't love them, and it's not because they don't love you. But for me, it's just kind of the giving love that profound is a little it's hard to describe. It's hard to say I love you for me, even though I have a lot of love for this person. So that song's kind of like, that's what that song's about. It's called Never Really Said. And this song was cool, man, because it was the first time I did a song. So I produced all of that song by myself and all the textures. And I was like, man, I thought one day.
What do you mean you produced it like you did it all here in your own computer?
No. So I produced the entire track, being that. So we recorded it at Logan Nix's studio back in 2014, I think.
Nice.
No, 2015.
When you were still in town, basically.
Yeah, I think we did 2015. We recorded it, and then I ended up adding a bunch of different textures. There's Rhodes. There's actually me doing like ahs and oohs in the background. Ooh. And then some background horn lines.
I didn't know that.
A Rhodes, there's a steel guitar on there.
I know that.
So
I heard that part.
The groove was inspired by Who Says by John Mayer and Stop This Train. Like, I've always loved that, with the brushes sort of thing.
Right.
And I've always really liked it. And this song was kind of the first one that I produced where I figured, I always remember when I was hearing this song and I was working on it, I was like, man, it would be cool to have like a famous producer produce it and really get the sound that I wanted. And then I was just kind of like, well, I'll just do the best that I can for now. And then listening to it after the fact, I was like, oh, okay, like I can create the sound that I want. And that was actually a very, very liberating and powerful experience. And so I think this was kind of the song that started the Truth Journey. And this is the last song of the CD, and it's called Never Really Said.
beautiful song, bro.
Thank you, homie. Dude, every time I hear it, especially that end section, that was by a steel guitar player named Tommy Dedamore. I did a Google search for steel guitar players for hire because I tried a few local steel guitar players, but they have jazz chords in them, like really weird, a lot of 13s and extensions and stuff like that. And it was, and I think it changes keys like 2 or 3 different times. And so it was something that I needed someone like really, really specialized.
Specific, right? Yeah, right.
Really specialized. So I did a Google search of...
Did you get them out of Nashville, or where they living?
So the first guy that I reached out to was out of Nashville. He was the steel guitar player for Trace Adkins. And he's like, hey, man, like, this isn't my bag. But check out this dude. His name is Tommy Dedamore. I think he was out of, like, Southern Texas or something. So he referred me to him. And I was like, is this something you can do? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. Sick. So I sent it to him. And he did 2 takes. I said, give me a busy take and then one not so busy. And then I kind of pick and chose from what he played, and especially that end section of what he played was just so beautiful.
It is, man. It's beautiful.
And did you ever see that show Shining Time Station?
No. What show was that?
They had like Thomas the Train and all that. Anyways, at the end of Shining Time Station, they have a really beautiful song. And it's just a picture, and it's aerial shots of a train going through like the sunset and whatnot, and kind of like they circle around the train. And that's at that end section when he's doing that steel guitar. That's what that reminds me of. It's just like kind of that section. But nah, man, I'm really proud of that song and how it turned out. And that was Donnie Tesso on bass, and he played. That is his playing on that is his tone, his style. That is some of the most beautiful playing I've ever heard him do. And there's not a single bass player in the world I would rather have on that track than what Donnie did.
Donnie's awesome. DT.
Logan was on drums.
Oh, yeah. Logan all day.
Ron Sanborn. So getting back to that control thing that we were talking about, I have to give Ron Sanborn a lot of props because I put him through hell with this song to the point where I didn't... Excuse me, sorry, I was like into the mic. I didn't want any...
I've been doing it all show.
The transition between those chords at the beginning, that 1 and the minor 3.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want any lag in terms of the notes. And so just like the way it was set up on the, I think it was like E flat to like F sharp or something. I don't know. I can't remember what it was, G flat. I can't remember what the chords were, but I didn't want any lag in the notes between shifting. So what I had him do, I mean, does that make sense? So
yes.
It's like when you go from one chord and then you go to the next, I wanted all those notes in, and I didn't want to hear any lag. And then like that's
you mean the lag? You're talking about the noise that the guitar strings
not
make
even the noise, because like
no space between the actual notes.
No space between the actual notes. But that was it was kind of a technical impossibility.
Almost impossible. Yeah,
it's almost impossible. But I want, like, and if you'll hear like in the very beginning,
Ron, can you do this impossible thing for me? He's like,
exactly. So what we ended up doing, I just had Logan do a click.
Yeah,
and I had him do a new track for every time, and I'd be like, okay, play this chord. So he'd be like, boom doo dan doo 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 boom doo dan doo 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 boom doo dan doo. And I was like, okay, that's enough. All right, let's go to the next chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom doo. Okay, that's good. And then I literally pieced together.
So you computer squished them together.
I computer squished the crap out of them. And then I said, okay, can you give me some fret noise? And so I had him like do some hammers and then go up and down. And every time you hear it,
you just like squeeze that in there. Yeah.
I added it so it sounded like there. And I mean, at the end of the day,
people, come on now.
I mean, whatever. Everybody creates music their own way. But
that's right.
That kind of goes back to like we talked about.
That's what makes us all individual.
Getting to the point of like relinquishing that control, and the fact that we went through that entire that's a long song. So imagine in the studio, like props to Logan and Ron for dealing with my extreme OCD.
Yeah, of course.
But Steve Figg, he played Rhodes and piano on that, and I don't know, man. I'm just proud of how that song came out.
So I'm really excited for people to hear the album, and I know people are going to be able to go to your website, which is ryanmontaño.com, for people to check it out.
Yep.
And they can follow you on Instagram. What is it? RC Trumpet?
RC Trumpet 6 on Instagram, and Ryan Montaño on Facebook. And I'll have it available. I'm going to start with the radio campaign here in late September, so in about a month and a half. And then after that, around that time, once that single comes out, then I'm going to release the entire album. I kind of have to think about how I want to do that, but I'm going to release the entire album so that it'll be on iTunes, it'll be on Spotify, Rhapsody, everywhere that you
can listen to music. Yeah,
it'll be.
So around the time that this podcast drops, which is obviously the nice thing about podcasts, is you can have them in the bag, so to speak. And so we will be releasing this close to the date that you'll be able to find the album. And so you will absolutely be able to find it almost everywhere that you can check out music, except maybe Hastings, because I think they closed down nationwide. Sadly.
Dude, man, physical CDs. It's funny because like
Physical
when you
CDs
play
are
at the
nice,
when you play at the festivals, it's like you have to have CDs, and the older crowd, they still like buying the CDs.
Oh yeah, man,
but
you need to have them.
I'm wondering how that's going to work. Like how I was thinking about like putting everything on like a thumb drive, right?
That's an idea someone thought about. I like that idea, but
And it includes videos. It includes pictures.
That is a pretty cool idea. I haven't seen someone execute it very much, like and sell and have a lot of thumb drives. That's a great idea, though. How much would you sell it for? Like $7?
$20.
$20.
Like I would put I was thinking about doing like different packages. So it's like you can get this, like, say, this is like a
only
blue
audio
thumb drive,
right? Yeah, the blue one is only audio, which is like $10, and then the $15 one, like it gives you like audio
and pictures, and then
pictures,
for like
and then
$40, you could get all the discography, all the tunes I've ever done,
$40
plus video, like maybe the music videos that I've done.
How cool is that? Yeah,
I don't know, but it's like, you
gotta figure out the format to like put them in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could figure it out, and it's just a matter of like loading on those, but. It's like how outside of like t-shirts and coffee mugs and stickers and stuff like for your merch, how are you going to get the music to the people? And essentially it's going to come from, the cell phone. So it's like, I think, depending on what bookings come through for next year, I was actually thinking about really doing that and then getting like them customized. Maybe it has like the logo on it or whatnot. But
I mean, it's an idea, but like it definitely is a lot. And I hope that people will get into them. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, definitely just experiment with it first. See how the reception is, right?
And then make sure it's formatted like, I have a Mac.
Yes,
and then
that's what I'm saying. That's what I was about to say.
And then they pay $40 for something that, maybe they accidentally format it, and then it's like, oh, crap. And then, I mean, if they were to email me, then I'd absolutely get them all their material.
Right.
Or if they have a Linux, then it's like.
trying to make it as user-friendly as it can be.
Right. And I mean, especially, you don't want to make the process difficult for people to hear your music.
Right.
You want it to be just super simple. And
that's a great idea, man. I definitely look forward to trying to do something like that myself. So might steal that idea, bro. But thank you, my man, for coming back on Art of Talk Music. And you got any shows? I know there's going to be an awesome show happening in November over at Pope Troy Theater at the University of New Mexico. Tell us about it, man.
So that's going to be... So a few years ago, I worked with, they're called GCAP, the Gynecological Cancer Awareness Project. And we did a show at the National Hispanic Cultural Center. And then a couple months ago, I heard from the director of that program, and she had asked if I would be willing to do their next benefit concert. So they're bringing in this national headliner. They're called NED, No Evidence of Disease. And it's basically doctors turned rock stars. And so basically that's kind of their thing, is they go around to all these benefit concerts all across the country, and they do and they play and travel and tour. And so we're going to be opening up the show, and I want to talk to her about actually making that like my CD release show, and then like giving a proceed a certain percentage of CD sales, giving it back to the program, to the GCAP, because I think that would be it's a cause that I believe in.
That could be, man. Or you can just do another show that is dedicated to that, because you know what I'm saying, Montaño, you and I both know that there is opportunities out there. But I mean, yeah, you're right. All ideas, bro. I'm sure from now, which we're recording this in mid-August, until the time that this actually comes out, you will have thought of and probably run a lot of ideas through a lot of filters and people that
for sure
will be a badass idea.
Yeah, so we'll figure that out, and then State Fair coming up, and then doing some cool shows.
When is the State Fair going to be happening?
September 7th. That's a Friday night.
Do you think the album is going to be coming out close to that? So maybe this podcast will be coming out. Well, anyways, we hope so.
We'll hope so. I mean, I'll definitely have, if
not, then
physical
it comes out
CDs.
afterwards.
Yeah, so physical CDs to sell. But it's the State Fair gig is just more kind of a fun, you know what I mean? Nothing too, I mean, it's fun. And then doing New Year's Eve in Amarillo, and then in about a month and a half, I'm going to have to start getting shows for next year, which is kind of like my least
2019. My
least favorite thing to do is bug people and hey, can you hire my band, and don't offer me $500 because that's not enough.
Yes.
But that's
it's part of it, bro. It's part of the game. You get back
I'm
into
excited
it,
to see. Yeah, I'm excited to see what will come, because stuff's already starting to kind of come in, and it's just a matter of sealing the deal and making it happen.
I'm excited to see where everything leads you, bro.
I appreciate that, homie.
I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's a lot easier whenever you happen to live with a guest that comes on the podcast. So,
Get out of the shower. Let's finish the podcast.
But look up Montaño's music everywhere. By the time that this comes out, his new album will be coming out. So I'm very excited. And thank you for coming on, brother man.
Thank you, homie.
Until the next time.
Until next time.
That was the episode. Thank y'all so much for listening. I encourage you to go keep an eye on Mr. Montaño's website. That is where you can see that album, which is set to release worldwide very soon. And if you haven't heard my episode number 2, that's with Ryan Montaño and bassist Arthur Metters. I encourage you to, because that was also a wonderful conversation. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you for listening to Art Talk Music. Talk.